Hello everyone. Previously we talked about project controlling and we discussed about the S curve, which is a production curve that allows us to monitor our project, whether it is behind or ahead of schedule, or whether it is under budget or over budget. In addition to that, we also discuss the cost and schedule control, which we discuss about the earn value analysis, which it refers to the determination of how much work has been performed on the basis of what was budgeted for the work as compared to what is actually being completed. So those are the two project controlling that we talked about last time, and today we are going to discuss project cost flow. The project cost flow, it is a construction accounting, as they call it. All right, so for this topic, we will be looking at the project control cycle, uh, how's the money flows into the general contractors, and what are those that impact the project performance, and how are we going to keep track of the quality, cost, and time. And if you remember, the quality, cost, and times are the key elements that help us figure out if a particular project has been completed successfully or not. So these three key elements here go hand in hand, that if you break one of those, pretty much a three-legged stool, that if you break one of those, that renders unsuccessful or a failure project. All right, so what is a cash flow? Construction company operations are project based, and cash flows can be estimated by assessing flows from various project various project situations and conditions. And what are those? We have project in progress, which we call it in the construction industry, birds in the hand. And then we have the projects under contract but not started yet. There is a birds in the bush. And then, of course, the third one is the prospective or potential project, which are expected to start um, in the coming financial accounting period. We call this the bird in the sky. So those are the three different situations and conditions to which we will be looking at how the money flows from a given various project. All right, so that is the cash flow to the general contractors. So what are those factors that impact the project performance? Well, we have several of those situations or conditions that may provide impact or affect the performance of the project. Of course, the weather condition. Now, we must have a plan B if ever that a project has been delayed because of intermittent weather condition. We have also the quality of workforce, that is the economy of supply and demand. If there is a lot of projects going on, there is a scarcity on those skilled workers, and what happens is that it tends for us as a general contractor to hire those individual that has not much of a background or skill on a particular task or operations. The same thing also if it is there is a um, limited number of project, we will be having a lot of supply of workers. In that case, it may affect our performance. We will be only employing those individuals that are well skilled, which makes our project faster. All right, the quality of the supervision that relies on the management skill and leading skill of the project manager. And of course, underneath him, the project engineers, the assistant project manager, of course, the superintendent, who is the person who know how of things being put together. And of course, we have the incorrect sequencing of work. Now, if we develop a scheduling that we didn't look at or examine the schedule and looking at those activities, um, we might be overlooking some of those activities that are interchanged that may affect the sequencing of the schedule. Of course, change orders is anything that can change the contract. That is primarily because of the owner's requirements, change, additions or subtractions, or a change in the scope of the project. So that affect the coming in and going out of money as well too. So overcrowded job site, that is probably the direct cost aspect of it. And in addition to that, it may even slow down the operation on the job site. And of course, those defective materials that we're expecting to use them right away, but because they are not working or something that are uh, things that is not within our quality requirement or within the specification, so we need to send those back, and that again cause a delay in our schedule. Inadequate tools and equipment, again, that is the job of the project manager to make sure that every equipment and tools um, must be at the job site at the time that we need them. Okay. All right, so we have late deliveries. It happen as well too, but we need to plan ahead. If we will be needing them early on in the morning, we might have them delivered in the afternoon a day before. However, there are several restrictions on that one, especially if the project is in a very tight location, such as in a central business district, wherein we don't have much of a laydown areas. So we sometimes utilize JIT, as they call it, the just in time. But if you are going to use the just in time method, you have to make sure that the particular material must be there at the time that you need them. Otherwise, it may cause delays on your activities. All right, so how do we track those three key elements? For the quality, of course, we'll be basing that on what is being said on the plans and the specifications, and of course, the code requirements. And of course, the cost is the estimate. How much have we budgeted at every given stages or phases of the project at every given time? We will look back into the estimate that we develop at the beginning, the estimate that we submit for the bid, and of course the time will be based against the schedule that we also again develop once they award the contract to the general contractor. All right, so there are several tracking quality that we could use. Field observation, we have that logbook at the end of the day in which it written down everything that happened, that transpired during the day. So we could look back into that logbook, what happened, if there's any equipment that idle, or there's not much of enough equipment, or if the equipment broke down, or any accident that may happen that may cause delay, additional costs into the project. Of course, submittals, that's the another thing. Submittal is a documents to which we usually submit to the owner through his representative, such as the architect, for us to get an approval of particular materials or methods that we are going to use for the project. So if that comes later, then it may delay our activities as well too. So we need to make sure and plan. There must be a gatekeeper for these ones, as the project engineers, to make sure that the submittal has been received and been approved, so that we will be able to um, procure materials or equipment. And of course, we have the shop drawing, which is a supplemental drawing that is commonly developed or created by the manufacturers, the suppliers, or the erectors. And of course, we have the mock-ups to details. Those are prototypes to make sure that the architect or engineers approve the methods and materials that we're using. And of course, we have the inspection. We have the building inspector from the city, and we could have also our third party or an in-house inspector to make sure that you comply with the quality. We have the quality control, as we call it. And of course, we have those field tests, which is part of the quality control aspect in the process as well. Yeah, such as, of course, field testing for soil, field testing for concrete materials. So those are some of the things that we use to track the quality. All right, so cost control is a continuous monitoring process used to track the variances. Remember, during the introductions for the class, we mentioned about the functions of project manager, and one of the function of the project manager is to control the four M's: the money, materials, machineries, and the manpower. So with that, we will be comparing some elements or basis as the baseline, where it's actually the estimate that we develop at the beginning and the actual cost that we're spending at every given time during construction. So we compare those two and we look at the variance or the disparity of those costs, and that will give us a quotient or a warning for us if there is some great deviations or variations on those costs, for us to be able to examine and look at what's going on the project. All right, so a cash flow analysis consists of a detailed examinations of the disbursement of funds. Very important. Remember, in the construction industry, time is money. Money is important. We cannot afford to spend or waste those money. It may drain our company. It may even will lose profit that will keep our company going. All right, so one of those tools that we've learned already is the S curve. It is a cumulative production curve or a cost flow curve, as we call it. So this is very essential. It is usually developed before the start of the project. This will guide us because as we plot those actual costs, we will see whether we are above or below the curve, and that tells us as a project manager to make an actions or create a plan to combat or to eliminate that particular problems. So if you are behind the schedule, there are several things that we can do with that as a project managers. As part of the plan, we may need to increase workers, or we need to probably provide overtime for the workers so that we'll be able to catch up or to bring back the project on track. And then of course probably additional shifting for the workers. All right, so cash flow to the contractor, we already mentioned about that a while ago. Project in progress, that is birds in the hand. Projects under contract, that is birds in the booth. And of course we have those prospective or potential project that we're looking at to participate in the bidding. We call it the birds in the skies. All right. One thing that I want you to keep in mind, especially if it is a multi-million project, of course the general contractors are not being paid ahead of time, and a lot of times they apply for payment or for the payment for the work they have done probably about after 1 month or after 30 days. So it is important that we need to make use of our resources as the general contractors in an optimum ways. Because if we're going to we're not able to plan out and use those money somewhere else, then we will not be able to start up or to support the operations of an ongoing project. All right, so we have here, as you've seen on the previous lectures that we have for S-curve, we developed the Gantt chart, we developed the S-curve. Again, in the S-curve lecture, you've learned how to create the S-curve. We did some calculation and plug in numbers into the Excel, and it allows us to draw the S-curve as well too. And you've seen also in your MS project, I've shown you how to show the S-curve on one of your laboratory exercise as well too. So we could draw the S-curve right through the use of the MS project. All right, so now in the case of the general contractors, there are two sides of the flow of the money, we have what we call as the expenditure, okay, expense or expenses. That's the one that you're going to cash out. And of course, we have those that are coming in, revenue, which is usually in the form of a payment from the owner as a payment for the job that we have done at a particular period of time. Okay. Now, one thing, as I mentioned a while ago, because we need to cash out money at the beginning of the project, you might be thinking, where are you going to get that money and how much you will be borrowing in order to support the operations perhaps in the first 2 months of your project? Well, that comes in what we call as the overdraft calculations. Otherwise, you could do the front loading to where you could create a heavy costing at the beginning so that you will be able to request that amount 1 month pass, and that will help you for the succeeding project. Otherwise, as a general contractors, it is important for you to determine how much money that you need, what is that maximum money that you must have in order to support the operations of your projects. And that is actually our goal for this class, for this lecture, is to figure out how much is that maximum. Okay, we call it the overdraft calculations. And again, this particular format I developed an Excel program on how to calculate the value of the overdraft. So I ask you to download that cash flow analysis format. I call it the overdraft calculation. In that particular table, pretty much the same as the table that we have here. It's actually provides you columns at every given period of the project. The only thing that you have to do here is to plug in the direct and the indirect costs that you are looking at spending at every given month or every given period. And of course, we have the markup as well too, or your contingency. And of course, you will be looking at also the retainage on the part of the owner. How much are they looking at withholding the payment that they're going to give it to you? Okay, so again, what is overdraft? Overdraft is the maximum amount that you're looking at to borrow from a lending company. So why is this very important? Well, you need to make sure that you need to have enough money to support the expenses of your ongoing project. Okay, so make sure that you have the resources to help you make the operation smoothly. Okay? All right, so the calculation is very simple. You just need to download that format that you have in Blackboard, the Excel format, okay? And it allows you to graph those costs at every given period of time as well too. All right, so this is the manual calculations, the formula, and how to calculate them. Expenditure is the direct cost plus the indirect cost, whatever the interest of the amount that we will be borrowing. Of course, that is additional expenses for us. And the revenue is the amount that we will be receiving from the owner. And the total amount billed is just simply the direct cost plus the indirect cost plus any reasonable amount of the markup that developed by your own company. And the total cost to date is just the sum of the direct cost plus the indirect cost of the current stage, and then we have the previous. And some other formulas that will help you figure out that requirements on that particular table. Okay, and the other thing that we need to look at is how quick we will be able to get the money back to create that break even between your calculation, that is the maximum amount that we need to borrow from the lending company. We are going to draw the expenses and the payment revenue. And then we are going to determine the ROR calculations, the rate of return, that is the rate on how fast we will be able to recover our investment. That is actually a break even between the expenses and the revenue on the part of the general contractors. In addition to direct indirect costs, we are also given the markup 25, retainage of 10%. That only happens within the first probably 2 months of the project, or within the 50% worth of the project. a finance charge, that is the interest cost of the money that we borrowed from the lending company. Okay, and then the payment will be billed at the end of the month and received 1 month after. All right. So we have here now the calculations. Again, to calculate this one, you will be needing your format that you have in Blackboard. So I encourage you to download that and be able to use it for your lab exercises and for you to be able to follow this lecture as well. In addition to that, you have also a supplementary documents that you have in Blackboard. You need to download that. It explains some of those steps that I am discussing here in this video. Alright, so what we need to do by using that format that we have, the Excel, we need to only plug in those direct and indirect costs at every given month. So here, so we have 4 months for this particular project, and then it will populate or automatically calculate those values within the shaded portion. As a caution to you, please don't mess up in any of those cells within this shaded portion. Those are predetermined formulas to develop this particular project cash flow. Alright, so in that case, we have here now the markup. We enter that based from the given values: 25%, 10% for your retainage, and 1% for your interest. So we plug in those three as well too. Okay, so those are the only thing that we are going to plug into this particular table. We only plug in, enter the values of the direct, indirect cost, the markup, retainage, and the interest overdraft. Nothing else. Okay, don't mess up in any of these cells here. I warn you again. Okay, so those are the unshaded areas, the one that you are going to plug in those numbers, and it will automatically calculate those values on the shaded portion. Again, I want to bring your attention here. So here we have the total cost of the project is pretty much 200,000. That is the total cost today. That's the total cost of the project. Half of that will happen on the end of the second month. In that case, we don't need to have a retainage on the third month and on the fourth month. In your format, this here may have some calculation on those. If you have numbers in those areas, you may need to just type in 0. So that's the only exception, okay, to where you will enter numbers into this shaded portion. That is, if there will be a values here and you are asked only to have a retainage only in the first 2 months of the project or half of the overall cost of the project, then you are going to type in 0 here and 0 here, nothing else. All right, or here, if there is a value here, you have to type in zeros within this line here. All right, so what's the purpose of this table here? Remember, one of the things that we have to calculate is the overdraft. The overdraft is the maximum amount that we need to borrow to support us for the project to have the smooth operation of the project. So in this case here, the maximum value that we have is 149,028. So that is the amount that you're looking at borrowing from a lending company. All right. All right. So once you have this table, you're now ready to draw your line. So in this case here, we have the explanation and the calculations below the table. So in the case of the expenses, that is negative direction. The revenue is in the positive direction. That's above the line 0. All right, so to calculate the first month, it is just your DC plus your IC plus your overdraft. So we have here now, for the first month, your expenses will be the direct and the indirect costs plus your charge. So we have here the direct cost plus the indirect cost plus your interest rate. There you go. So it will give you 30,300, and that will goes here. For the second month, of course, your revenue for the first month we didn't receive. Okay, you will receive that. You will apply 1 month and you will receive 1 month after you apply. So that's pretty much at the end of the second month. So we have 0 for your revenue for the first month. For the second month, direct cost plus the indirect cost plus your interest. So it's this 70 here is coming from your 65 plus 5,000, and that will give you 70,000 plus the interest rate. So here at the bottom, 1,003, that's where you're getting that 71,003. Alright, and then of course the revenue for the first month is the amount that you receive. So that is 33,750. Okay, and then we have here for the expenses for the third month, the direct indirect cost plus the interest rate, and that will give you 81,476. That is again, that's 75 plus 5, that's equals to 80 plus the interest, and that is the value that you're going to put it here. And do the same thing also for the fourth month, the fifth and the sixth. And in the payment here we have you will notice as we move on here now, those become positive. These are already receivable values, okay, on your calculation. So all right, so that's how you calculate those values. So we have here the payment received 37, 78, 100, 37,500. So that is the value that you're getting here. All right, there you go. So once we get into the next table, and the same table that we're using for the overdraft, what you need to do is just shift that to the next tab here, this one here at the bottom. From your overdraft calculation, you have to shift that into your ROR tab and plug in the value. So how do we calculate this net present worth? So these are the values that we need to calculate here. Now this one here, I am going to provide you the values, okay, in order to give you at least a range to where you're going to begin your calculations. Alright, so to do that, to calculate the net worth for the first month, it is just simply your revenue minus your expenses. So going back here, on the first month, your revenue is 0, your expenses is 30,300. So we have here 0 minus 30,300, that is negative 30,300. That's the value that you put here. All right, so the same thing also for your month 2. You just need to go back here, your revenue minus your expenses, and that will give you here revenue minus your expenses, and that will give you this value. All right, then for the third month, you have to subtract again 78,000 minus 81,000, and that will give you negative. But you will notice here that once you get into the fourth month and in the fifth month, go back here, 100,000 minus 70,000, that is the value that you have here. So it's positive. Once you get here on the fifth month, it's only 37,500 because we don't have any expenses. Because this parenthesis here, that is receivable value, okay? We don't pay the bank or the lending company. So that parenthesis here signifies receivable value. So we don't need to subtract any expenses for both the fifth and the sixth month. And that's the reason why we have here 37,500 and we have here 37,500. And then plug in this value here. I'll be giving you that 20% to give you the range, and then you have here your 22%. Alright, so our goal here for the ROR is to come up with a value that is equal to 0 to create that break even. So if it is hard for us to figure out, well, you could play with it. If it is not giving you 0 here or close to 0, say at least less than $50, If it is less than 50, then that would be the interest rate or the rate. So you can play that. You can only use one of this one if you want it. Otherwise, you may need to have two interest to see where is the value in between. Okay. Now, in this particular case, you will notice that it fluctuated from this value to this value here. Okay. So from a negative value, this is negative. When you add up, this is a negative to a positive value. Okay. All right. So I am again going to give you this value and this value here. And you need to calculate. How did we calculate this 20.45? We are going to use an interpolation. Okay. We have your 20, that is your 5170. Okay. And then we have here your ROR, which is equal to 0, and we have here 22%, which is your negative 1786. Okay. Well, in this case here, it's the opposite on the receivable and the expenses. By the way, in Excel, the negative is in parentheses. All right. There you go. And plug in. This is our equation to calculate the ROR. You just need to plug in those values here. This is the value that we need to calculate, the ROR. So this is your X1, this is your X2, this is your X3. This is your Y1, this is your Y2, and this is your Y3. So you just plug in here. Your X3 here is 20, your X1, 22, your X1 here is 20. Multiplied by your Y1, that is your 517. Divided by your Y3, this is your Y3, that's negative. This should be Y1 is 517. Okay, this is Y1. Okay, plus whatever your X1, which is 20%. Solve this value here is this equation. It will give you 20.45. And if you want to check if this is the right value for the interest rate, try to create another column here and plug in this value here. So this shaded portion here in orange, that is just checking only, okay? And it gives you here lower than $50, and that will be acceptable. Otherwise, you may need to find 4 decimal places to completely give you a 0 value here. But if that is less than 50, that still be fine. Okay, I'm going to accept that, but not that is above 500 or 1,000. But if there's less than $50, that will be fine. So again, you will be needing the Excel format, and you are just going to plug in values. I repeat, in this particular overdraft table, you are going to plug in only the direct and the indirect costs, the markup or the contingency, the retainage withheld, and the interest. That's it that you are going to plug in here. Unless otherwise, there are values here, and the problem told you that you are going to have a retainage only for the first 2 months or half of the cost of the project, then I want you to go back and turn this to zeros. Otherwise, you don't need to do anything here unless it tells you half of the project has no retainage. Alright, once you have that, you are going to draw this curve here. You could use manually to draw them. This explain here how you're going to calculate each of them and then draw them. Revenue is above, expenses is below. Parenthesis is receivable, so we don't need to subtract that when we move on to the ROR. So next thing you're going to do now is to move from your overdraft to your ROR, and then solve these values here. How do we solve this? We have here this illustration here, and that will be based from this graph here. You cannot calculate this one unless you draw this, okay? And I explained this one here, okay? Alright, so that is how you calculate the ROR, okay? This is what we call as the cash flow analysis, and it is very important on the part of the general contractor to make sure that they will be able to support their field operation, enough resources to make the operation smoothly. Okay, and it guides you also as a project manager to see, or the general contractors to see how much money you will be needing to borrow from the lending company. In addition to that, we will be able to see as well how quick we will be able to recover the amount that we spend on this particular project. All right, so as usual, I want you to download the supplementary material, and that will guide you as well as you go over with your laboratory exercise. Again, if you have any question, shoot me an email, and I will make sure that I'll be able to get back to you. All right, guys, thank you.